Right, so Israel's obsession with stopping Iran ever having a nuclear program, scaremongering over nuclear weapons as they consistently do, have now reached the point of such utter desperation as talks between the US and Iran, indirectly via intermediaries in Oman, are making more progress than ever, that they've just jumped the shark to such hilarious extremes it's become almost laughable. A press conference given by Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel has gone viral for all of the wrong reasons, as her increasingly loud, increasingly shrill, and increasingly desperate demands to be believed came under uncomfortable questioning when everything she was saying about Iran was turned back on her and Israel. All theatrics and no substance, yet still, despite the progress being made, US sanctions have continued to be placed on Iran and those trading with them, and the Israeli lobbying is becoming more and more obvious. So even if things appear on track now, how can anyone, least of all Iran, trust the US to do right by them, when they know as well as the rest of us do that Israel always seems to get their way, and their way still involves bombing Iranian nuclear sites?
Iran cannot have nuclear weapon, and this is what's in front of us. We understand it's not just a threat to Israel, but to the entire world.
What about Israel?
Israel is not posing a threat to anyone. We don't have any ambitions in any other country. Iran has ambition in the entire Middle East. They're posing a threat and are controlling and have destroyed Lebanon, controlling Lebanon through Hezbollah, destroying its politics, destroying its social fabric, destroying its economy. They did the same thing in Syria. They do the same thing in Iraq. They do the same thing in Yemen, destroying the population, destroying the country, bringing them on the verge of starvation. And this is what they're attempting to do in Jordan. That's what they're doing in Africa. That's what's happening. Who's arming Al-Shabaab? Who's training Al-Shabaab in Somalia right now? What's happening in Central and South America? Hezbollah is the biggest controller of illegal drug and weapon trafficking routes in Central and South America. Trump's war on the cartel is not just about the illegal drugs and weapon and the threat of those gangs, but it's the Iranian threat. And so Iran is a threat to the entire world, and Israel is at the front line. At the front line of stopping the worst enemy the world can, and I don't understand that question.
With all respect, the question was not about Iran. The question was about
Israel's
Israel.
posing a threat on. Israel has never provoked, has never attacked unprovokably a neighboring country or someone else. This has always been on the defense of our country and our people. We have no ambition. When you hear the Ayatollah saying every single day about their ambitions, what about the Turkish ambitions? What about what's happening in Syria? Do you ask those leadership about it?
Of course.
Well, Israel is the key for stabilizing the Middle East.
So if Iran abandons its nuclear program, Israel will do the same?
Israel is what's stabilizing the Middle East. Iran is what's destabilizing, arming, and terrorizing the entire population around. Do you know what we've been through? Not just the Israeli people, the Lebanese people, the Iranian people, the Yemenite people. They yearn for freedom, for food, for economical prosperity. And who's preventing that? Iran. This is the greatest enemy the world have during these days. And so this arming Iran is not Israel's interest. It's your interest. It's international community's interest. Try and imagine what is happening right now in the Middle East with with nuclear weapons. It's not just a threat on Israel. It's a threat on the entire world.
Right, so that was Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Sharren Haskel going into absolute meltdown when what was apparently the reporter from Russia Today kept asking if Israel would give up its secret nuclear weapons program, reputedly consisting of something like 80 or 90 nuclear warheads, if Iran halted its nuclear enrichment. And it just became an exercise in increasingly more and more ludicrous statements of psychological projection, moving on from being a threat to Israel, forgetting Israel has attacked Iran first each and every time Iran has retaliated, whilst claiming Israel has never attacked a neighbouring country first. And I'm minded to recall how Hezbollah literally came into being following Israeli invasion of Lebanon. And let's not forget the Palestinian territories being under illegal occupation by Israel since 1967, which came about after invasion, of course. She mentioned Syria, which Israel have invaded since the fall of Assad, and yet if you can follow her up and down demented diatribe, we're supposed to believe Iran are a threat to the entire world now, not Israel at all. Well, who has Iran invaded lately then? Now, I watched that and I was thinking she was describing the US more than Iran, if we're going to talk in terms of global destabilization and enabling of atrocity and threat, especially when it comes to the Middle East. And what Israel wants and what Israel needs always comes first, and the US are always happy to deliver. Sharren Haskel's performance during that press conference can only be described as hilariously performative, bordering on comical, as she appealed for military support for action against Iran. Israel's desperation is so transparent, it's just veered into the completely absurd. Yet despite decades of hostility and sanctions, both the US and Iran are now reportedly closer than ever to agreement on a nuclear framework, all despite Israel's increasingly insane antics. Yet as talks progress via Omani intermediation, they continue to try and disrupt it. Despite the good for peace in the world and the region that agreement between the US and Iran over this would bring, Israel is actively and transparently trying to wreck these ongoing nuclear negotiations. The closer the US and Iran seem to come to diplomatic resolution, the more frantically Israel is lashing out, driven by an obsession with Iran's nuclear program that is far more about maintaining regional control for them than confronting any real nuclear threat, and the US is all about that too, of course. So Iran are taking nothing for granted despite these reports over progress. But the hypocrisy, especially following Sharren Haskel's ridiculousness especially, is that Israel is widely believed to possess an unacknowledged nuclear arsenal itself, completely outside the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran incidentally is signed up to, and immune from international inspections, is insisting that Iran must have its nuclear program completely dismantled. Not limited, not monitored, not paused, destroyed. All while Iran continues to insist it is not pursuing nuclear weapons, citing a fatwa by the Ayatollah Khomeini that explicitly forbids them. All despite being signed up to that nuclear non-proliferation treaty. All despite inspections finding Iran is not making nuclear weapons. And in fact, Iran has recently published several breakthroughs in the field of nuclear medicine and the fight against cancer as part of its nuclear program. None of it is good enough for Israel, though. All of it is designed to ensure Iran remains indefinitely isolated, treated as a pariah when Israel is the real pariah, sanctioned and strategically weakened, and appeasing Israeli paranoia as a result. But with negotiations going so well, driving that paranoia all the more, reports suggest Israel is actively considering a limited military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities still, which of course run completely contrary to Sharren Haskel's claims of Israel not attacking anybody first, and of course following 3 attacks on Iranian sovereign territory already over the last year or so, a move that would not only destabilise the ongoing talks, Iranian distrust would likely see them assume the US were involved, well, it's probably US weapons that would be used, wouldn't it? And perhaps they would be. But it could also potentially plunge the region into a broader conflict. A strike on their nuclear sites, as toxic a threat as that would be, would certainly see Iran respond in a manner we probably haven't previously seen. Israel have already floated the idea of a joint strike with the United States. Even Donald Trump, as warmongering as the orange peel complexioned clown is, reportedly waved off such a proposal. Yet despite Trump's hesitation on military action, his administration remained committed to a campaign of economic sabotage, even though these talks are supposedly going well. So what is their end game? For example, Trump imposed new sanctions on a Chinese refinery last week for allegedly purchasing $1 billion in Iranian oil, accusing China of supporting the Iranian economy. All, incidentally, as Iranian oil exports have hit record highs. So might say as much about the ongoing tariff war with China as it does about Iran, while simultaneously undercutting the momentum of the Iran-US nuclear negotiations along the way. More sanctions came just yesterday, literally the same day as talks advanced further, apparently, talk of an agreement potentially within months, as Trump decided to sanction Iranian liquid petroleum gas exports, LBG, cooking gas for many foreign markets, just completely counterintuitive, and you wonder whether Israeli lobbying had a hand in that as well. Iran, for its part, is firm on its red lines. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has publicly declared that the country's military capabilities, including defensive missile programs, are non-negotiable. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has echoed these sentiments, making it clear that Iran's right to enrich uranium will not be sacrificed either on the altar of appeasement to Israel. Iran is also justifiably wary of US reliability here. After all, it was Washington that walked away from the original Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, under Trump during his first term in 2015, shattering years of work to build trust and exposing Iran to renewed sanctions again. Today, Iran is demanding cast iron guarantees that any new deal will be respected long term, an insistence that is hardly unreasonable, but also clearly necessary after their experience of dealing with Trump before, especially as Israel doubles down on its lobbying efforts to derail any potential agreement, and they really have been doubling down. Just last week, Israel dispatched Mossad chief David Barnea and Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer to Paris in an effort to influence Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff in yet another attempt to lobby the US into backing away from its diplomatic overtures with Iran. Even Mossad are now being involved in this. They are bricking it in Israel. But such is also Benjamin Netanyahu's long-held desire to see war break out between the US and Iran for the benefit of Israel, because there would be no other winners. That such behind-the-scenes lobbying is allowed to continue unchecked while a possible peace agreement inches forward is nothing short of sabotage. But how often have we ended up seeing what Israel wants, Israel gets? And yet in the face of all of this relentless pressure, the talks are still managing to progress somehow. Allegedly better than expected at that, and hopefully we'll see some detail of that soon if things carry on like that. Certainly that progress makes sense in light of new reports suggesting that Israel are panicking so badly at this point that they are, despite an apparent lack of US support, considering a limited strike on Iran in the near future. Gambling that a quick, contained operation on Iran's nuclear sites might be tolerated by an increasingly disinterested or distracted American administration. But it wouldn't likely be allowed to pass by Iran, still owing Israel a response from their last strike on Iran as it is. If anything, Iran's confidence reflects a broader shift in the regional dynamics here, away from Israeli interests. Recent diplomatic overtures, including a historic visit by the Saudi defense minister to Tehran, shows that West Asian powers are increasingly willing to engage with Iran outside of the narrow media lens of US-Israel antagonism that is all we ever seem to see in mainstream news in the West. There is momentum for regional integration happening, and dialogue is growing outside of Western spheres, so little wonder Western media isn't reporting it. For Israel, a diplomatically reintegrated Iran is a threat to Israeli primacy in the region. If Iran is allowed to develop civilian nuclear capabilities, open up its economy, build alliances with its neighbours, Israel loses its monopoly on military and technological might, which it has to be said has been heavily cultivated and engineered by the West. Its narrative of existential threat will also collapse, built on no factual basis at all, as that is, and as Sharren Haskel so dramatically demonstrated. This is not about nuclear weapons at all, at the end of the day, in my mind. This is all about Israeli dominance, power, influence, and control. And more people, I hope, are seeing it. It isn't just in Iran that Israel are having major disarmament issues and woes, though. It's happening in Lebanon, too. Their demands that Hezbollah be disarmed by force are being met with narratives from President Joseph Aoun that this would trigger civil war, that Hezbollah have a point with Israel still occupying Lebanese territory. But the way the US diplomacy is going there, you'd think the US would want such things. And when Israel is always put first, who would bet against that? Check out all the details of that story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new content published daily, as well as supporting the channel at the very same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people. And I hope to catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.